Water exploded across the street like a sudden wave, splashing directly onto Stella as she rushed past. She staggered backward with a gasp, soaked from her shoulders to her knees before she even understood what had happened. A man holding an open container froze, eyes wide, hands trembling as water dripped from both of them onto the pavement. "Oh no, 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 I'm so sorry," he blurted, dropping the container and reaching out helplessly. Stella didn't respond at first. She just stared at her dripping clothes, the folder in her hand ruined, the makeup she'd spent 40 minutes perfecting now streaking down her face. For a long second, she didn't breathe. She simply stood there in the middle of the street, soaked, shaking, trying to understand how everything had fallen apart in one moment. She snatched her phone out of her bag with shaking fingers and checked the time. 10 minutes left. 10 minutes to reach an interview she had prepared for over a month. 10 minutes to secure the opportunity that was supposed to change her entire life. And now she was drenched, gone. Everything gone. The man kept apologizing, pacing in front of her like someone searching for the right words and failing every time. "Please, I didn't see you. I was just trying to pour water into the cooler. It slipped. I swear I didn't mean to." "You just ruined everything," Stella whispered, barely audible. "This was the most important day of my life." He froze. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. Cars passed, people stared, but Stella barely noticed any of it. Her mind raced as she imagined walking into the company in this condition. It was impossible. She couldn't go home to change. She couldn't fix anything. The interview she'd waited for, prayed for, cried over, it was gone. She squeezed her eyes shut, trying to steady her breathing, but her voice still cracked when she said, "I can't make it anymore." "I'm really sorry," the man repeated again, softer this time, like he finally understood the weight of what he had caused. "I'm Adrian, by the way. This was never supposed to happen." Stella expected anger to rise in her chest, expected herself to explode, scream, curse Adrian for destroying her future. But nothing came. Instead, there was only a strange emptiness and a tired, heavy acceptance. Adrian stared at her like he was waiting for her to scream. When she didn't, he asked, puzzled, "Why aren't you angry at me, Stella?" She looked at the water dripping from her sleeves and then at the man standing in front of her with sorrow in his eyes. "Because you weren't doing anything wrong. You were helping people." She gestured toward the crates behind him where bottled water and food packs were stacked. "How can I scream at someone who's trying to do something good?" He blinked at her, stunned, as if he had never heard something like that in his life. Stella sighed deeply, lifting her ruined folder. "I lost the interview, but at least you're doing something meaningful, so let me help you instead." Adrian stared like she'd spoken another language. "You want to help? After what happened?" "What else am I supposed to do?" Stella said with a weak shrug. "The day is already ruined. I might as well make it useful." He didn't argue. He just stepped aside and let her join him. And so Stella spent the next hour handing out water and food to people on the street with her clothes still wet and clinging to her skin, her hair dripping, her shoes squishing with every step. But she smiled. She talked kindly to the people she served. She didn't complain, didn't blame anyone, didn't try to make herself the victim. Adrian kept watching her with the same confused expression, like he was trying to understand how she was real. "What job were you supposed to interview for?" he eventually asked, handing out a bottle while glancing at her. Stella told him everything, the role, the department, the way she had researched the company for weeks. She even laughed a bit as she described how many practice interviews she had recorded on her phone. He listened carefully, but something changed in his expression the moment she mentioned the company's name. A slight pause, an eyebrow raised, a sudden sharp awareness in his eyes. "What interests you about coal industries?" he asked, using the company name deliberately. "Everything," Stella replied immediately. "Their values, their structure, the opportunities they give people from humble backgrounds. I admire how the founder, Adrian Cole, stayed out of the spotlight and built something huge without chasing fame. The salary would change my life, yes, but the meaning behind their work." She paused, then added quietly, "It feels like the kind of place where people can grow and still give back." She didn't notice the way Adrian swallowed at her words, the way he stared at her like she had unknowingly stepped into a place she didn't realize she belonged. "You did research on the founder?" he asked. Of course, she said. Even if nobody really knows what he looks like. He never shows his face. The active CEO does everything publicly. But the real founder, Adrian Cole, he's like a ghost. He didn't correct her. He didn't reveal that Adrian Cole, the ghost founder of Cole Industries, was standing 2 feet away from her, wet shoes, simple shirt, surrounded by charity supplies. He didn't tell her that the man who spilled water on her and the billionaire she admired were the same person. He didn't mention the billions attached to his name. He didn't say that the active CEO she saw in interviews worked under him, not above him. He just kept studying her, quietly, curiously, almost thoughtfully. Stella continued helping, even though she was shivering slightly from her wet clothes. And the more she served, the clearer something became to Adrian. She wasn't pretending. She wasn't being kind because she thought anyone was watching. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. Her kindness was real. A few hours later, Stella wiped her hands, preparing to leave. "Thank you for letting me help," she said softly. "I should get going. I need to figure out what to do next." Adrian watched her step away, still stunned by the calmness she carried after losing so much. He didn't ask for her number. He didn't ask for her full name. He'd already seen it on the ruined folder when she clutched it. But as she walked off into the busy street, he whispered to himself, "Stella, I will find you." Because he already knew exactly what he needed to do. Adrian spent the rest of that day unable to think about anything else. Meetings came and went, documents were placed in front of him, phone calls echoed across the conference table. Yet his mind stayed locked on Stella, the drenched woman who had lost everything and still chose kindness. Not once did she try to impress him. Not once did she act like she deserved a reward for helping. She simply did what felt right, and then walked away with nothing. It bothered him more than he expected. He replayed the moment Stella looked down at her soaked clothes, with her voice breaking as she whispered that her chance was gone. He replayed the way she still smiled at strangers afterward, even though life had just punched her in the stomach. He replayed the way she talked about wanting to help others because it reminded her of her mother, and the way she never once recognized who he was, even while describing his own company with admiration. By the time evening settled, Adrian already knew he wouldn't be able to sleep without doing something about it. He called in his executive assistant and said in a low voice, "Get me a list of today's candidates who didn't show up, especially for the junior operations position." His assistant stared for a moment, puzzled. "There were several no-shows today, Mr. Cole. Do you want the list filtered?" "Just find them," Adrian replied. "Every single one. Cross-check their resumes. Look for Stella Okafor, junior operations, heavy research on the company." It took hours. His team was confused. They had never seen Adrian take interest in individual applicants. He was the type of man who handled billion-dollar decisions without blinking, yet here he was waiting restlessly for a single missing name. When they brought him the list, he scanned quickly until he saw it. Stella Okafor did not appear. Adrian exhaled slowly. "She missed the interview because of me," he murmured. Nobody understood what he meant, and he didn't explain. He simply issued one order. "Reschedule her interview immediately. Same position. Make sure she gets the email tonight. I want her in this building." The assistant nodded. "Should we tell her it's a second chance given by the board?" "No," Adrian answered. "Tell her nothing. Just reschedule. And mark my calendar. I'll be present in that interview." The assistant blinked at him in shock. Adrian Cole rarely attended junior-level interviews. But Adrian didn't care. He was determined to see what Stella would do when given another opportunity. Later that night, as lights across the city dimmed, the email arrived in Stella's inbox. She was sitting at the corner of a small coffee shop wiping tables when her phone buzzed. At first, she thought it was a promotional message. She almost ignored it. But when she saw the Cole Industries logo, her hands began shaking again, but for a very different reason. She clicked the message. The words felt unreal. "We would like to reschedule your interview. Please come in at the new time." She stared at the screen for a long moment, whispering, "How?" Over and over again, she didn't understand it. Nobody had ever given her a second chance like that before. She assumed missing the interview was the end. Yet, here she was, reading an invitation that felt like a miracle. She didn't know that the miracle had Adrian's signature behind it. That night, she went home and prepared with twice the determination she had before. She ironed clothes again, rehearsed answers again, studied again, but this time she was smarter. She placed an extra outfit in her bag. She packed wipes, a brush, and hair ties. She made sure nothing, absolutely nothing, could ruin her day again. By dawn, Stella was ready. She reached the coal industries tower far earlier than necessary, standing confidently outside the tall glass structure she had admired from afar for years. She looked around, taking in the busy lobby, the elevators, the employees scanning their badges. It all felt unreal to her. She whispered, "I'm finally here," to herself, unaware that someone was watching from across the lobby. Adrian stood near a pillar, wearing a plain dark suit that blended him into the background. He noticed her the moment she stepped in. The same posture, the same hopeful determination in her eyes. He watched Stella clutch her bag nervously and inhaled deeply like someone preparing for battle. When she saw him, she nearly jumped. "You're here?" she asked quietly, surprised to see the man from yesterday standing inside coal industries. Adrian gave a small smile. "Just visiting. I know someone here." "Oh," she nodded, believing it instantly. "Well, I'm here for the interview I told you about." He tilted his head as though he didn't already know. "This is the one you lost because of what happened." "Yes," Stella said, "but somehow they rescheduled it. I don't know why, but I'm grateful." Adrian looked at her with sincerity. "Good luck, Stella." "Thank you," she replied before walking into the elevator. As the doors closed, he allowed himself a breath he didn't know he was holding. Inside the interview room, Stella faced a panel of 3 professionals. They began with the usual questions, but then one of them smiled unusually and said, "Before we continue, we want you to know something. Mr. Adrian Cole, the owner of this company, said very good things about you." Her face went blank. "The owner?" she asked. "But I've never met Adrian Cole." The interviewer nodded. "He insisted this opportunity should not slip away from you." Stella blinked repeatedly, confused. "I don't understand. How does he know me?" "He'll explain it himself," the interviewer replied before standing and heading toward the door. She sat frozen, her heart racing, her mind spinning. Had she done something wrong? How would someone that powerful even know who she was? The door opened again. She looked up, and her entire world stopped. Adrian walked in, the same man who had spilled water on her, the same man who had done charity with her, the same man she thought was just a kind stranger on the street. He closed the door behind him and said quietly, "Yes, Stella, I know you." Her mouth fell open. What are you doing here?" Adrian stepped forward slowly. "I'm Adrian Cole, the founder you said never shows his face, the one nobody knows much about." Her heart thumped violently against her chest. "You own this company?" Stella whispered. He nodded. "Yes. And what happened yesterday showed me more about who you are than any resume ever could." He took a seat across from her, and the room shifted from an interview to a moment that would define the rest of her life. Stella couldn't look away from him. Her mind struggled to put the pieces together, replaying every second of the previous day. The simple shirt, the water container, the charity work, the quiet way he listened, the way he never acted important. Nothing about Adrian suggested someone with unimaginable power, and yet here he was, sitting across from her, the true force behind coal industries. Adrian leaned forward slightly, speaking in that calm tone she remembered from the street. "I didn't tell you who I was yesterday because I needed to see something. I needed to understand someone without titles, without status, without the mask people wear when they think they're standing in front of wealth." Stella swallowed hard, still trying to breathe normally. "You let me talk about your company like you were a stranger. I even said your name. You didn't say anything." "I was a stranger to you," Adrian replied. "And you were honest. You spoke with passion, with sincerity. You didn't exaggerate or pretend. You didn't act like someone trying to impress a billionaire. You simply showed who you are." He paused, watching her carefully. "And when I ruined your most important day, you didn't explode. You didn't insult me. You didn't even raise your voice. You helped people instead. That told me more about your character than any interview ever could." Stella looked down at her hands, overwhelmed. I only helped because it felt right. It wasn't anything special. You're wrong, Adrian said softly. Kindness that costs nothing is easy. Kindness in the middle of pain, that's rare. You didn't help because your day was going well. You helped when everything had gone wrong. The interview panel stayed silent, watching the exchange. It was clear this was no ordinary moment. This wasn't just a conversation between an applicant and an employer. It felt deeper, like a man who had spent years searching for genuine people had finally found one by accident. Stella finally managed to whisper, I still don't understand why you're telling me all this. Adrian rested his hands on the table. Because I want you to know why you're here today. You didn't miss your interview. I canceled it. She stared at him, confused. You canceled it? Yes, he replied. After what happened, I made the call myself. It wasn't fair to end your opportunity over an accident I caused, so I asked my team to reschedule, and I insisted you be brought in today. Stella's chest tightened as she processed his words. The chance she thought she had lost forever had been given back to her by the very man who ruined her morning. It didn't feel real. But why me? She asked quietly. You're not just anything, Adrian interrupted gently. You are someone with resilience, someone who doesn't break under pressure, someone who chooses compassion even when life is unfair. That is exactly the kind of person any company wants. One of the interviewers cleared his throat as if waiting for permission to speak, but Adrian raised a hand, signaling him to wait. This part wasn't theirs to handle. He continued, Before we decide anything, I want you to tell me something honestly. If life had gone differently yesterday, if you made it to the interview and never met me, would you have still spoken the same way about helping others? Stella nodded immediately. Yes. Helping people makes me feel connected to my mother. She believed the world becomes better one act at a time. I try to hold on to that. Adrian studied her expression carefully. There was no hesitation, no rehearsed answer, no attempt to impress. Just truth. He leaned back slightly, as if the final confirmation had landed. Then you deserve more than just a job. Her breath caught. What do you mean? He shifted his gaze to the panel and said, Prepare the documentation for the higher level offer. I've made my decision. Her eyebrows furrowed. Higher level? What? Adrian turned back to her. Yesterday, you said the salary of this position would help you build your life and allow you to give back, but the role you applied for is too small for someone with your mindset. You need a role that matches your vision, your determination, your sympathy for people, and that requires responsibility. She stared at him, speechless. Her hands trembled slightly as she whispered, Are you offering me a different job? I'm offering you a better one, he answered plainly. A role that pays more, impacts more, and gives you the chance to help others the way you said you wanted to. Stella's voice cracked. Why would you trust me with something bigger when you barely know me? He smiled lightly. I know more than you think. I saw how you treated people yesterday. I saw how you handled disappointment. I saw how you carried yourself when nobody was watching. Anyone can be confident in a good moment, but character shows in the worst ones. He paused, then added, And you passed a test you didn't even know you were taking. Stella inhaled shakily, emotions pressing against her chest. She wasn't used to being seen this way. Most people overlooked her, dismissed her, or doubted her abilities. Yet here was Adrian Cole, who controlled a multi-billion-dollar empire, telling her she was more valuable than she believed. I don't know what to say, she whispered. Say yes, Adrian replied. Say yes to the opportunity. Say yes to building something bigger than what you imagined. Say yes to the life you thought was out of reach. She blinked rapidly, trying not to cry. I don't want to disappoint you. You won't, he said without hesitation. People like you rarely do. The room felt heavier, quieter. Even the interview panel, who usually kept strict professionalism, looked moved. Then Adrian added one final thing, something that struck her even harder than the offer itself. You didn't lose your chance yesterday, he said softly. That was the moment you earned it. She covered her mouth briefly, trying to steady her breath as the truth sank in. Adrian stood, signaling the end of the interview, and said, "Welcome to Coal Industries, Stella." But as he turned to leave the room, she realized something important. This wasn't the end of her story. It was the beginning. When Stella stepped out of the interview room, she didn't feel like she was walking. Her legs moved, but everything else felt unreal, like her mind hadn't caught up with her body yet. Moments ago, she was a soaked, defeated woman who thought life had robbed her of everything. Now she stood in the hallway of a company she had dreamed of, holding an opportunity she never imagined could belong to someone like her. She kept replaying Adrian's words in her mind. "You didn't lose your chance yesterday. That was the moment you earned it." Every time she remembered it, her chest tightened. She didn't know whether she wanted to laugh or collapse into tears. One of the assistants approached her politely. "Congratulations, Stella," he said with a small bow of respect. "We'll send you all the onboarding documents today." She could barely respond. "Thank you," she whispered, still trying to process everything. On her way out of the building, she saw Adrian again. He stood near the glass entrance, speaking quietly to a security officer. But when he saw her approaching, he stepped aside and let the conversation end naturally. He didn't treat her like someone beneath him. He didn't act distant or untouchable. He simply looked at her with the same calm sincerity he had shown during the interview. Stella approached cautiously, unsure what to say to the man who had just altered the entire direction of her life. He spoke first. "How do you feel?" She laughed nervously. "I don't know. Shocked, grateful, overwhelmed. It doesn't feel real yet." "It will," Adrian said. "Give it time." For a moment they stood there in a silence that wasn't uncomfortable, but full of everything unsaid, everything strange and unexpected about the last 24 hours. Stella finally asked, "Why me? There are people more qualified, people with better backgrounds, people who probably deserve this more." Adrian shook his head gently. "Deserving isn't about background, it's about heart. Skills can be taught, character can't. Yesterday you showed who you truly are. Today I simply responded to it." She looked down, trying to hide the emotion building in her eyes. "Thank you for believing in me." "That belief is earned," he replied. "Keep showing the same heart you showed yesterday. That's all I ask." She nodded as he turned to leave, disappearing into a private elevator with a security escort. She watched the doors close, still amazed that Adrian Cole, the man she once described as a ghost, had chosen her. And for the first time in a long time, she believed she wasn't invisible. By the next morning, Stella was sitting at her small desk at home, surrounded by paperwork, welcome emails, and messages from various departments. Her new role was bigger than anything she had ever handled before. There were tasks stacked up, meetings scheduled, and responsibilities she had never imagined she would touch, but she didn't feel intimidated. She felt ready. She reminded herself of her mother, of the kindness she wanted to carry forward, the generosity she wanted to protect. She dressed with confidence, reviewed her materials, and whispered to herself, "This is your chance. Don't waste it." When she arrived at Coal Industries, employees hurried past her, phones ringing, voices echoing through halls lined with awards and framed newspaper articles. She carried her bag tightly as the elevator carried her to her new floor. As soon as she stepped out, a manager greeted her warmly. "Welcome, Stella," he said, offering a firm handshake. "We've heard a lot of good things." She blushed. "I hope I can meet everyone's expectations." "Don't worry," the manager smiled. "Mr. Cole doesn't speak highly of many people. You clearly made a strong impression." Stella didn't respond. She didn't know how to respond. She just followed him to her desk, breathing in the moment. Hours passed. She learned fast. She asked questions. She took notes. She absorbed everything around her despite her nerves. She knew she wasn't perfect, but she gave her best, because she finally understood that her best was enough. And somewhere else in the building, Adrian was watching. Not literally watching every step she took, but he kept tabs quietly, asking managers how she was settling, reviewing the reports of her onboarding, checking if she needed anything but refusing to overwhelm her. He wanted her to grow on her own strength, not under his shadow. Later that afternoon, when she returned to her desk from a quick break, she noticed a small envelope waiting for her. There was no name on the front, no signature inside, only a single line written in neat handwriting. "Kindness built this company. People like you will protect it. AC." She pressed the note to her chest, feeling tears she didn't want to shed at work. In the weeks that followed, Stella transformed quietly from the wet, defeated woman on the street into someone with confidence, purpose, and direction. Her colleagues respected her, her managers trusted her, and Adrian Cole never once treated her like she was lucky to be there. He treated her like she belonged, and he wasn't wrong. Word spread through the company about the mysterious new hire who seemed to have a connection to the top. Nobody knew the full story. Some speculated, some remained silent. But Stella never bragged, never acted superior. She simply worked hard and earned the respect on her own merit. One evening, weeks later, she was leaving the building when she saw Adrian again outside, speaking to someone from the board. When their eyes met, he excused himself politely and walked toward her. "How's the new life treating you?" he asked with a genuine smile. Stella exhaled softly. "Better than I ever imagined," he nodded proudly. "Good. I told you your story. Wasn't ending. It was beginning." She looked at him with gratitude deeper than words. "I don't think I'll ever forget what you did for me." "You don't have to," Adrian said. "Just pass it forward when your time comes." She nodded, feeling the full weight of the message. As she walked away that evening, she realized something powerful. Her life didn't change because of luck. It changed because one moment of kindness revealed who she truly was, and one man with power decided to reward it. What began with spilled water in the street became the turning point that rewrote her destiny. Not because she begged, not because she knew someone important, not because she was perfect, but because Stella stayed kind when life wasn't and the world noticed. Your like and comment help this video reach more people. If you want more stories like this, hit subscribe.